All right, welcome back to the program. Comrade Festus Osifo joins me right here to discuss the federal government and Labour's meeting, the outcome of it. Comrade, welcome to the program and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Good morning, Nigerians.
Good morning. As of the last time you spoke to me and now, what has changed?
Yes, you remember the last time we had this conversation was when we were supposed to meet with the government again on Sunday. But I think that meeting still went on. So TUC had the meeting with government on Sunday, and it brought its charter of demand and put the demand forward before the government. So they received the demand. So we looked at it. We went through them one after the other. So one list, one item after the other. Then at the end of the day, they now said they have accepted it, that they will go back and walk through them and come back to us with further details for us to engage more deeper and see how action plans in some of the items could be marshaled out. So this was in the meeting we had with them on Sunday. So NLC also had a meeting with them on Monday, and at the end of the day, there was now a communique that came out on Monday. So this communique had some items, and it also had the addendum as adopted that on the 19th, we will now meet and come up with a framework on how, a detailed framework on how some of these items could now be worked out and implemented.
Okay. Your brother, or is it cousin now, NLC, you went to a meeting first with federal government. Labour said, of course, that both of you actually said the federal government ambushed you. Labour now had planned a proposed strike that was supposed to start today, but it backtracked because we also saw that the industrial court came up with an ex parte injunction on that. Now, let's quickly take a look at the communique which you've just spoken about, because I also read the communique. If we can take them one by one before we come back to your demands, because thankfully you sent me your demands. But let's quickly take a look at it. NLC to suspend strike to enable further consultations. So that has been done now. Number two, TUC NLC to continue negotiations with federal government and secure closure on the resolutions. What does that mean? Resolutions of what?
I know. To secure, which of the communiques is that?
The one that was read after your meeting.
Okay. Yeah, to secure closure on the items above.
Okay.
So if you look at it, that one is an addendum. You have the number 1 to 7 items. So to secure closure to those items. So those items are well spelled out, relating to minimum wage.
That's your demands now. Is it?
Yes, the demand of labor. Yeah, it's the demand of labor.
Okay, we'll come back to that, but I just want us to run this through. Federal government, NLC and TUC to establish a joint committee to review wage increase proposal, establish a framework timeline for implementation.
Correct.
Okay. FG, NLC, TUC to review the World Bank financed cash transfer scheme. I assume that you're talking about the $800 million loan?
Yes, because
or
we
any
told
other
them.
One that comes?
Yes, anyone that comes, but we told them that the way they plan to administer that we will not accept it. That because today we don't have, just as I said the last time, that you were doing conditional cash transfer, and in this transfer, it's not verifiable. We can't even lay claim to the people that have received them. We can't even verify their account number, their BVN numbers. That's so. Before you do anything like that, before you say, okay, you want to make interventions, we need to interrogate the process and be sure that the vulnerables are actually protected.
So when you mentioned this to the federal government, what was their response to you?
I know, that's part of a review. I mean, they claim that they have it there, that the system may not be perfect, but that they have a database that they have been following. We said, okay, you have it, but we have not seen it. We need to interrogate the process to be sure that the targeted audience is actually protected.
Okay. Federal government, NLC and TUC to revive the CNG conversion program earlier agreed on in 2021.
Yes, that's the compressed natural gas program that I talked about the last time as well. That CNG is actually cheaper when compared to PMS. So that was the alternative that Labour has been pushing and advocating over the period. That if we have CNG in place, if lots of our stations we have CNG and we have cars that are compliant to the usage of CNG, we wouldn't be in this quagmire today, because naturally without subsidy, CNG is much more cheaper when you compare to PMS.
PMS. Okay, the other three that I have here borders on the establishment of a framework for the completion and rehabilitation of refineries, a framework for the maintenance of roads and expansion of rail networks. Then other demands submitted by the TUC to the federal government will be assessed by the joint committee. Now let's quickly move to your demand, and I assume that NLC and those are TUC's and NLC's demand. Let's put that letter again on the screen so that we can take them one by one if we can. Yes, that's it right there. So are these agreements by NLC and TUC?
No, what happened, you know, again, what is right there, these are issues that are bothering Nigerians. So we often say that labor is one. So it does not really, if you look at the first item, number 1 to number 6, they are also common to what we have here. So it was just a shopping list that we put together. So it's not really, we can't say it's NLC, it's TUC, but we could say these are the issues that are clearly bothering Nigerians, that if well articulated and if well discussed and agreed on, it will actually not just protect the Nigerian workforce, but it will go ahead and assuage the feelings of millions of Nigerians. So in that, you have number 1 there, for example, or rather, say, let's go to number 2. Number 2 that talks about minimum wage.
Why don't you start with number 1?
Yeah, because,
because the
we have progressed discussion now. Yeah, yes. We have progressed discussion.
Pump price should be maintained while discussion continues.
Yes, when we say while discussion continues, we did not say if you don't maintain, we will not discuss. So these are two different things. That was the resolution of the neck of TUC that said that, yes, keep insisting that government should go back, but don't boycott discussion. So that was actually why we went to the discussion that occurred on Sunday. So during that discussion, then number 2 downward, they were now presented and they were now discussed. The reason I was going to number 2 straight is just to state the fact that, for example, if government today move minimum wage to 200,000 naira, it's not TUC member or only NSU member that is going to benefit. It will be the entire Nigerians that are in working class, both in public and in private sector. So that's why I'm saying that let's not limit it to say this is a TUC list, but this is a list that if we agree with government today, it's going to benefit everybody. For example, you see something about reduction of cost of governance. If you reduce cost of governance today, who will it benefit? The money that will be saved will be used for what? Used for capital projects that are going to benefit the entire Nigerians. So that's really the point.
Let's come back to the issue of the minimum wage, because for me, that's also where it gets interesting. We had this argument on Monday that federal government have always said that if it has more funds, if it's able to free up the few subsidy funds, that it will have money to do other things. And we really talked about it here on Monday extensively. Almost extensively, but not as much as I would have loved, which we'll do on later shows, from 30,000 naira to 200,000 naira. How feasible is that? Because that's what you are asking for before the end of June 2023, with consequential adjustment on cost of living allowance like feeding, transport, and housing. This is a government also that is borrowing to pay subsidy, that is borrowing to pay salaries. Many states are still not paying 30,000 naira as we speak. I heard you also clearly earlier when you talked about 200,000 naira not just being for public or civil servant or those in government, but private sector. How are you speaking with private sector? Can private sector pay 200,000 naira minimum wage, bearing in mind that you have about 39 million nano, micro, small, and medium businesses in Nigeria, bearing in mind that small-scale businesses is the engine of growth in Nigeria that employs more of the population of Nigeria. So how do you justify that?
Yeah, Nancy, first of all, this is a demand. So this is not the outcome of a negotiation. This is a demand. So I will not be going to a negotiation. I will go with my barest minimum.
Was this demand of 200,000 naira scientifically or data?
Yes. Let me explain. Let me explain.
How did you arrive at it?
Yeah, if you look at that, first of all, when we negotiated 30,000 naira in 2019, As at then, it was approximately, if you convert it to USD, it was almost 100,000, sorry, $100 per month.
Yes.
So when you look at that, that gives you a little over $3 per day. So if you now calculate that $3 per day to where we are at $3 per day today, with the level of devaluation that has happened, with what is happening in the parallel market, so you are going to discover that if you look at that, you are going to have something around 71,000 naira as at today. So by the time you infuse the inflation that has happened since 2019 into it, it's going to jack it up to maybe somewhere much more above 120,000. And remember as well that the government said they want to unify exchange rate. And because CBN rate is a list, and you have a parallel market out there, so we think from our findings, where the direction that government is going, they're actually moving upward. So if government move upwards today, if they get to maybe somewhere around, let's assume, as reported by Daily Trust, let's assume that it will be 630.
No, but
so
the CBN came
they
out
refuted. It's
yes,
okay, but
yes.
we know that is where they are going, but it's okay. Let's go with the CBN for now. But let's assume, that's why I said let's assume, that they are going to 630. By the time they move to 630 as CBN rate, and you don't have FX to pump into the market, what is going to happen is that parallel market may move up to 800, 900. So if that happens, we also factor in that
if there's a unification of exchange rates,
yes,
there may be no arbitration anymore.
You don't legislate.
That incentive for the parallel market may not be there anymore. Just like what we saw 2010, 2011 during the Jonathan days.
Yes.
That
let me explain the difference. No, the difference between then and now is this.
Yeah.
Now, today, you have, let's leave the parallel market. In the CBN rate, you have almost about 3 or 4 windows. You have different windows in there. So the unification, because CBN doesn't have proper control over the parallel market. But within their rate, they have the IRA window. They have this swap window as well. So they have different windows within the CBN. I mean, they are coming. I mean, if they come, maybe they will allude to that. But I know that they don't use one rate. That is the exchange rate that they said they should unify, because they cannot legislate over parallel market. But how do you bring parallel market to that unification? It is when you now pump in FX into the market so that the legitimate needs of those who need FX will be met. When you can meet with the needs of those traveling, when you can meet with the needs of those that are sending their children abroad, when you can meet with the needs of those that want to import goods into the country, then they may not have incentive to go to parallel market. But if you cannot meet that, CBN rate may become 1, but the parallel market may still be adrift if you don't pump money into it. So in arriving at that 200, what we did was that we did some assumptions and we did some modeling that at the end of the day, when CBN rate moves, let's assume to that 630, that the parallel market may move to about 800. So when that happens, we also factor that into the about 100 plus that we have talked about. Then after that, we added the markup. But what we factor, the correct factoring that we did, we'll leave that for the negotiation, because we added a little markup to it to give room for that level of discussion and negotiation. Then how do you pay? We brought the argument before government, and we told them that the way we are today, that most of the states, they are not paying. But we also think too that it's all about designing priorities. One, and government told us expressly that yes, that we should forget about the ways and means, we should forget about all that, but that when they do this, that more money will be available. And we are also seeing that they also want to devalue the NACI between now and the next 1 month. We'll come to this studio and we'll talk about the official devaluation of CBN of the Naira, because that is where they are headed.
So you got that indication from the meeting?
No, I will not allude to that, but maybe when they do it, we can discuss that much further.
But did they tell you to forget the CBN's ways and means? Because
no, because we asked some questions. You know, like what I said here on Monday, that if we remove the ways and means from the federation account sharing today, and you now bring in the savings in subsidy, that the difference will not be much. But they gave some technical explanations why they think it will be much. But that technical explanation, what I got from that is that more Naira may be available. More Naira may be available because when they move imagine they move the exchange rate from that 450 to 630. What is going to happen? You're going to have like 50% Naira available, but the dollar equivalent might be the same. Because what they are just doing is to take a constant dollar and multiplying by a higher exchange rate. So that will get more Naira. So that more naira may be available. So if more naira is available to the government, both the state and federal, they should be able to meet an increment in the minimum wage.
That's, the economics of the fuel subsidy is so much that, and it's so very intricate that you that's talking about labor and the federal government needs to sit down with all federal government, the agency, CBN, NNPC, and all of that needs to sit down to take a look at that. Okay, let's take a look at number 3. A representative of state governors will be a party to this communique, and all the governors must commit to implement the new minimum wage.
Yes, correct.
Must commit, but they didn't commit to the last one. Some are not paying that 30,000.
That's why I want them to commit now. You know, again,
so what would change?
Lesson learned from the past. Lesson learned from the past. The last one, a representative of government forum was there, but this one, I will want them to commit, and we will hold them accountable.
Why didn't you hold them accountable before?
Do you know how many states we've had strikes in order to enforce this minimum wage?
But
now we will take it beyond strike. We will take it beyond strike.
But it seems that strike
because
is
at the
your
end
last,
of the day,
yes,
we are going to take it beyond that. Because if you look at these governors, okay, if you go down the list, you are going to see where we talked about reduction of the cost of governance, 15% in 2024 and 30% in 2025. We mean it, because you cannot ask Nigerians to sacrifice. You cannot ask Nigerians to tighten their belts, and you are going on business as usual. So for us, we want them to commit and tell us. For example, today, we have asked some questions. Why is it that today, Nigerians have been asking, convoys of governors are endless. The security votes is something nobody questions. Today, they drive cars made from abroad. When you have innocent and when you have locally assembled cars, the more government make it a policy that the cars that are manufactured here will be cars that they will be using. Anambra State is doing it. They did it when Peter Obi was there, and I think today Soludo is also following that track. What stops them from saying only made in Nigeria cars? When you do that, you are empowering local production. When you do that, you are these people will expand. Innocy expanded at a time in Anambra because government agencies, they were patronizing Innocy. So we must develop deliberate policies that will be able to drive local production. When we do that, we will reduce the import bill. When we do that, we will reduce the excessive reliance on USD because our naira value will show up. So these are some of the things, conversations that we must have. Government must contribute their quota to this austerity that they are telling us that we are in.
Okay, let's take 4 and 5. Tax holiday for employees both in government and private sector that earn less than 200,000 naira or 500 USD. That's US dollar monthly, whichever is higher. Then number 5, PMS allowance to be introduced for those earning between 200,000 and 500,000 naira, whichever is higher. So explain.
So the reason we are using 200,000 naira there is actually that because 200,000 naira was already captured as a minimum wage. So what that means is that for those in that minimum wage bracket, you should give them tax exemption. Tax exemption should be given to those within that minimum wage bracket so that they will not face the level of hardship. Because you may not give such exemption to those in the upper class of the earnings, but those at that lower level should be considered. So that 200,000 is a reflection of the minimum wage of 200,000 that we are demanding.
Okay, so for example, if Labour and the federal government comes to an agreement and say it's XYZ that should be the amount,
yes, it will reflect. Yes, it will reflect that. Yeah, correct.
Okay. Number 6, the exchange rate for retailing PMS in the country must be kept within a limit of plus or minus 2% for the next 10 years, where the fluctuation is not more than 2%. The minimum wage will automatically increase at the same rate.
What that means is very clear. What we are saying on that is that let's assume today, the calculation that went into the PMS today, let's assume it's about, let's say 500 naira exchange rate. If tomorrow the exchange rate goes up to about 800, what is going to happen is that the price that we are paying today, we are going to pay much more. So we are saying that what are those input factors that goes into the PMS price calculation? Because these products are imported, because these products are priced in USD, so for you to be able to price it in naira, there must be an exchange rate. So if you leave that exchange rate open, it's going to be a problem. Today, the reason we were buying at a time kerosene at about 1,000 naira per liter is because they don't have access to the CBN exchange rate of 450, but they were going to the parallel market. So what we are saying invariably is that if the exchange rate is devalued further, when you devalue it between now and maybe the next 10 years, you should reflect that in the minimum wage.
Okay. Setting up of an intervention fund where government will be paying 10 naira per litre on all locally consumed PMS, another kind of subsidy.
No, it's not subsidy. What we are, that is not subsidy clearly. What we are saying is that, okay, today, this money is going to be available to government. When it's available to government, they all share it. So we don't know how they spend it. But let us understand how they spend, just a portion of it. Today, they said that they are subsidizing with about 300 naira per litre. So, but we are saying that, take 10 naira out of that, put it in a fund that everybody will place an eye on. How is this being expended? So we'll have a governance structure that was also described there, so that everybody will have input on how this is done. For example, one of the things that was dear to me is that, and I think I've talked about that in this studio, is that if you have such intervention fund, you could channel it to 2 areas, for example, to education and health, so that between now and the next 4, 5, 10 years, there is no medical personnel that are running abroad today. The Jackpot syndrome that is affecting the medical professional could be addressed. We could also use that as well in addressing our SU problem, so that Nigerians will see that when your child go to school and they are meant to study 4 years course, 4 years is 4 years. So that is why we said that government should not just have 100% control of this for them to be spending and making business as usual, but let them take just a little part of it, put it in a fund that everybody will place an eye on how they use it to solve perennial challenges that we are faced in the country.
Okay. From your meetings with the federal government so far, this new administration, have you, as Labour, have you seen a willingness from the federal government to solve the fallout of this petrol subsidy removal once and for all? That's one question. The second question also is that Labour, when I mean Labour, you and your colleagues, Labour is also being looked at, not with so much sincerity is coming out from you and your colleagues in terms of representing the interest of Nigerians, in terms of perhaps you and your colleagues are a bit compromised in terms of how you handle with the government. That's one. That's two. The third question.
Maybe we'll take one after the other, so that I will not lose track.
Okay. Number one. Number one, the question of willingness from the federal government.
Yeah.
What do you see?
Okay.
Right now?
On that, you know, government will always tell you that they are sincere. Government will always tell you that they are signing this agreement in utmost good faith. They will all, in fact, they kept repeating that they will only sign what they think they can implement. That the era of signing MOU and MOAs and 2-3 years down the line coming to tell you that it's not implementable is over. Those are the things that they have told us. That they are new government, that we should try them. Those are the things that they have told us. But do we believe that? The answer is not really, because all governments, when they come to power, that is what they tell you. When the Buhari administration came on board, he told us he will obey the rule of law. He told us that he's going to do X, Y, Z. But 8 years down the line, we have the verdict.
So you, government is not being so sincere to you?
No, we cannot say today of this this administration. We cannot say, I cannot sit here now to say an administration that just came in about 1 month ago, about 1 week ago is not sincere. But I've reported what they have said, but we have we are watching, but we will hold them accountable, because in the past, at times when we sign MOUs, we too will go and relax, thinking that government will implement. We will come down half a year down the line and start. But in this, we will interrogate the process from day one.
Okay.
Then coming to the other one.
Question.
Yes, coming to the second question.
Are you now sincere with?
Yes. You know. Again. When you go to a room, Nigerians are not there. You have a selected people that goes there to have conversations, because others are not there in that room with you. So a lot of things could go on in the mind of anybody. So we are all free to assume anything we are assuming, but the bottom line at the end of the day is that we are doing it to the best of our ability, looking at all the constraints around. Just as when the NLC president said this morning as well, that we looked at everything. We looked at the injunction. We looked at, okay, how do we move forward? We put everything in a basket to say, okay, what is the best way forward? What is the best direction forward? But because, even if I talk on television for the next 2 hours, I may not be able to represent the entire discussion that went on in that room. So because Nigerians were not there, so different misgivings, and we don't blame them. For somebody today to be buying PMS for over 500 naira, for transport fare to be this hiked, I mean, people must be agitated, and people must be concerned.
Are the minds of Nigerians really in the minds of you and your colleagues,
Absolutely.
Labour, going into that room to negotiate on their behalf?
Absolutely, no doubt whatsoever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then, secondly, the other structure of the Nigerian society, for example, artisans that live on like $1.90 a day. For example, the 133 million Nigerians that are multidimensionally poor. I don't want to be pulled into that school of thought to say that fuel subsidy is for the rich, and I think that that is also a message from the elites.
It's not for the rich.
Yes, it's a message from the elites to tell the poor people that this does not benefit you.
No.
There is a transmission mechanism, as it were, for fuel, and it goes across the whole society. So that I'm not part of that message.
I agree with you as well.
So how do you really put these people, these categories of people, into that conversation? Because there's a transmission mechanism, as I've spoken. The market woman will see that fuel is over 500. She will increase her corn because she was also sending her children to school. She's buying fuel, or she's buying coal to even do the corn and all of that. Coal prices have also gone up. So what do you think about that?
Yeah. First, can anything be done today to completely wipe these tears 100%? I don't believe. I don't believe there are things government will do today to wipe the tears of Nigeria 100%. But if you look at that shopping list that we put forward, for example, if we're able to design a system, not just the one they say 5,000 naira to be thrown at people for 6 months and that, if we're able to design a system, when we were talking about the review, we also talked about low-income earners. These sets of Nigerians were also what was at the back of our mind as well, that how will these people be protected? Then again, when we talked about the electricity, what can we design? What are the things we must put in place to stop this talk of getting electricity into these megawatts? We are not eating megawatts. All we want is light in our homes and light in our various areas of businesses. So if, for example, we are able to hold government to that, it is going to affect this sex of Nigerians that you have talked about. If, for example, we are able to cut down on wastages and the cost of governance, there is a way, because that money will be transmitted into infrastructures, for example. So it has a way of also affecting this sex of Nigerians. So for us, in that basket, we believe that we have put forth a list that would inculcate those in the public sector, those in the private sector, and those that are also in the informal sector. Okay. Can we also, as we are interacting all over, we're also hearing from Nigerians. So when we go into that meeting, one or two other things may also be inculcated, so that at the end of the day, we come up with the best program that will reflect and will not put Nigerian masses and the entire Nigerian workforce into more difficulty.
Final question, because we have another interview, and the question is around the dishonesty and the lack of transparency around how many liters of fuel that we consume.
Yes.
With about 30 million cars, 30 million vehicles in Nigeria, there's still no factual. I've heard different figures, even from the NNPCG CEO. And the dishonesty around, you are telling us, take this away. What will happen to the other the other figures that were not transparent? Okay. Do you understand? I don't know if Labour is also taking a look and not just allowing the federal government to just bamboozle you and let sleeping dogs lie. I know that there have been different probes, different National Assembly investigations regarding fuel subsidy, but is Labour also pushing that?
Yeah, so the point, okay, before I come to this, you quickly, when you were talking about the fact that it's only elite that benefit from fuel subsidy, the answer is no. A lot of Nigerians that are doing little jobs here and there, they are using generators.
Yeah, but that's,
I mean,
that's
in our
what
homes,
the elite is trying to
that
push.
is what they are saying, but we are also telling them,
telling
them that is not correct. We are also telling them. Then in terms of consumption, the GC of NNPC had admitted that what it can account for is the number of trucks that leaves the depot every day. But the actual consumption, so with that number of trucks leaving the port, that they can estimate to say this is what leaves the port. but the actual consumption is not known. That at the end of the day, for, like we have done some studies in other parts of the world, you have in each of these meters and in the fuel stations, you have a kind of an AI, artificial intelligence device that is being attached, so that as you are dispensing, it transmits to a central room. So you can easily collate at the end of the day, we consume X, Y, Z amount of PMS today. But in Nigeria, in those retail outlets, we don't have them. So the figures that you see on a daily basis is actually the number of trucks that are leaving all the depots around the country on a daily basis. So majority of these at the end of the day, or not majority, a good number of these trucks end up outside the shores of the country.
That's what they tell us.
What we have said is this.
Yes.
What we have said is this. You don't, that is not an excuse for subsidy removal. You don't transmit your inefficiency to the Nigerian masses.
Your ineptitude.
It is not the workers and the Nigerian masses that will go to the borders and protect the borders. It is the responsibility of government to protect its territory. Yeah.
Okay. Comrade, I think we'll leave it at that. You said something and I've picked it, that between now and the next 1 month, let's see what will happen.
Yes. Let's see if they will walk their talk. Because as we say, you can always say anything, you can promise anything. Like as we have said in Nigeria over and over again, signing MOU or MOA is not actually the issue, but it's its implementation. So we are watching.
So we'll see, and I know you're just a phone call away, so we'll definitely speak again. Thank you very much for coming. I've been speaking with Comrade Festus Osifo, the TUC, that's Trade Union Congress, and the Pengerton president on the federal government and labor meetings outcome on the petrol subsidy removal.